On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
I love my father, I love my brother, I love my family. I will always do. Nothing of what I've done in this book or otherwise has ever been any intention to harm them or hurt them. The need for her to rehabilitate her image.
That made her dangerous.
That made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't. Well, the British press said that. All of the family members that live within the Windsor and Ascot area were jumping on a plane together, plane with 12, 14, maybe 16 seats.
You were not invited on that plane.
I was not invited.
Oh, shut up. Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. I took 2 weeks off and all hell broke loose. Paul Burrell, let me start with you. You, like most people, get a kicking in the book. He dismisses you as self-serving, writing a book just to put one side of the point of view. I mean, I had to laugh when I read that. This is by a guy who's literally just done exactly that.
Yes, but Piers, you knew my story. At the time, I was being trashed by everyone, and I went to the highest court in the land. I had to survive. I had to feed my family. Everything I had was taken away from me. Harry's in a totally different position. He's an angry, petulant, privileged prince who constantly blames others with no accountability on his part. His mother would be absolutely appalled by, don't only undermine himself, he's undermining his country, his family, the institution, which is the monarchy, which his mother was very proud of. It beggars belief. I don't recognize the young man that I grew up with. I don't recognize that man anymore. I just don't know what's happened to him. I think he's lost the plot completely, Piers. This book shouldn't be called Spare, it should be called Blame, because he's blaming everybody else but himself. Yeah,
I completely agree. And also, I've never seen an unhappier looking person who constantly tells us how happy he is. This is not a happy man. He's bitter, bitter, bitter.
No.
And there seems to be no end to the bitterness.
Yes. No, and you have to remember, our dear late Queen had to suffer this too before she died, because she also watched the Oprah Winfrey interview and thought, what on earth is happening here? Why didn't Harry come and talk to me about this? So she went to her grave, actually not knowing the truth, with great distress, which Harry compounded in her final days of her life.
Well, I honestly think the Queen will be turning in her grave, reading all this stuff and reading the fallout, because not only did that Oprah Winfrey interview air literally a couple of days after Philip was taken to hospital, and as we later know, died within several months, but the book has now come out within 3 months of the Queen dying. And there is his response to the death of our great monarch, is within 3 months to do a book which causes severe damage to the institution that she represented so magnificently for over 70 years.
I totally agree. And Piers, you remember those boys growing up. You saw them grow up. You came to Kensington Palace. Now, in those days, Diana always had the final word. So I'm going to leave you with my words, which I think Diana would be saying right now. She'd be saying to Harry, jumping up and down, wanting to be noticed, shh, Harry, be quiet.
Yeah, you do wonder who on earth is having that conversation with him. Well, let's go to Trisha Goddard. So, Trisha, you were there on Good Morning Britain on the day, the morning after the Oprah Winfrey interview aired. We had a pretty lively series of exchanges on that show. As you know, I left Good Morning Britain the next day because I was asked to apologise for disbelieving her claims of racism. I said I wanted to see evidence of this so-called racism. We now learn from Harry's own mouth that they did not call the royal family racist after all. So I'm not quite sure why I had to leave my job. Are you?
Yes.
Well, go on. Why?
Because they actually didn't use the words racist.
Oh, please.
And would you like me to finish?
No, I'll tell you what I want to do, Trisha. Before you go any further, I want to play you what they said on Oprah. Then you can repeat what you've just said. Let's watch this.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Yeah, and the end of that first clip with Meghan Markle goes on to say that if the baby was too dark, that would be a problem. Yes, you may think that. So that I'm afraid, Tricia, that is racism.
Hang on just a minute.
The charge is... Let me finish my question. Let me finish my question. The charge was racism against the royal family. At the time, they produced no evidence. Her version of events was nearly 2 years after Harry's timeline for when this happened. They've never named the royal member who said this stuff, and now we get told casually it's not racism.
All right, can you just play that again? Because there must be something wrong at my line. I didn't hear either Harry or Meghan use the word racism. I heard you use it. I saw the press use it. I didn't actually hear them use the word. And that's when we had that robust exchange of words, I think what I said to you is that I do get fed up with other people labelling, white people, labelling what is and isn't racist to black people. Now, if they'd actually used the word racism, I would be agreeing.
Trish. Honestly, this is utterly ridiculous.
So what is racism?
She was asked I'll tell you what racism is. I'll tell you what racism is.
Oh, good. Hang on,
I know I'm white.
Let me get comfortable.
Let
me get comfortable.
I know I'm white.
Piers Morgan's about to lecture a black woman about racism.
No, I'm about
tell
to tell you.
What's racism?
I'm about to give you an example of racism as a middle-aged white man who I know is the enemy to you.
You know.
Let me tell you what an example of racism is. An example of racism would be somebody expressing concern about the skin colour of a baby from a mixed-race marriage, and when the interviewer then says, "What if it was darker? That would be a problem." Yes, you may think that. That is an example of somebody expressing racism. And that became the headline and narrative for the next 2 years after the interview. And for you to shamelessly sit there and pretend that wasn't what they meant is utter bilge.
If there were more black people in the media, in the tabloid media, they may have had the opportunity to look into that and explain it a little bit more. I didn't see it as racism. I saw it, and that's why I got cross when you decided to label it
I didn't decide to do anything.
When we were having
that exchange, they literally confirmed to Oprah Winfrey that a member of the royal family had expressed concern about the skin colour of their baby, and if the baby's skin colour was too dark, that would be a problem.
When a black person attempts to talk about this in other than headline news, when I'm trying to have a reasoned conversation, I get shouted over. Why is my experience, or what black people experience, why do we have no currency? Why am I not allowed to explain
They've literally had front-page headlines about the racist royal family for 2 years. How much more currency does Meghan Markle want?
No one has called the royal family racist. I mean,
for God's sake, honestly, this is ridiculous.
I would say it's built on the Commonwealth, and we already know Charles has had problems. You know, they've talked about the crown that Camilla may or may not use because the history of one of the diamonds, the Koh-i-Noor diamonds and what have you. We know that the royalty and many royal families around the world were built on the backs of slavery, racism, Commonwealth countries having goods stolen or taken away from them. We know that. Unfortunately, it's not taught in school.
Sorry, that's got nothing to do.
But
with respect, Tricia, that has nothing to do.
The history is racist.
You can't just speak endlessly without me jumping in. Sorry. With great respect to you, you can't just keep talking. I'm allowed to ask questions. It's an interview, right? My question for you is...
but you're not allowed to make statements without listening to what somebody says.
Meghan Markle made a direct charge, supported by her husband, that a member of the royal family had expressed concern about the potential skin colour of their baby, which, if it was too dark, would be a problem. That is racism. They made a charge... Yes, that's called racism, If you think that if a baby's too dark, it's a problem, that's called racism. Sorry to have to lecture you about racism. I know I'm not allowed to as a white man, but actually, that is an example of racism.
Everything. Tell us about my history. Tell us about the history of black people and
What's that got to do with what they said?
Because they didn't say it was racism.
Yes, they did.
Somebody else used that word. They stepped aside from using that word, I think, very deliberately.
Why did they win an award?
Tell us about unconscious.
All right.
Tell us about unconscious bias.
I'll tell you about unconscious delusion, which is they won an award.
No bias. What does it mean?
I do the questions, you do the answering. It's called an interview show, right? Just before Christmas, they accepted an award for their heroic stand against the structural racism of this royal family, based on what they told Oprah Winfrey. That was all a complete lie. There was no racism, we now know. They never meant to say it was racism. You're supporting them. That was never meant to be racism. Queering the colour of a baby from a mixed-race marriage and expressing concern if it was going to be too dark is not racism. Trish, you take me for a complete mug. It couldn't be a clearer example of racism. Why deny that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, so am I right in thinking that you know better than you? I have no idea of what racism is.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said to you very clearly.
Oh, sorry, that you
sorry,
are more.
What you keep doing,
learned.
Tricia, what you keep doing, you keep putting words into my mouth I'm not actually saying, and the viewers aren't stupid.
Well, that's
can hear
what
the
people
conversation.
did with them. They didn't use racism.
You want people to believe that actually what she said, Meghan Markle to Oprah Winfrey, supported by Harry, does not constitute racism. Sharon, let me just pick up with you, because you were directly involved in all this. This goes back to the Oprah Winfrey interview. And it's absolutely crystal clear in that interview what Meghan Markle was saying, supported by Harry, that someone in the royal family had expressed concern about the unborn baby's skin colour. And when probed by Oprah, if the skin colour was too dark, that would be a problem, Meghan Markle said, you may well deduce that, yes, right? That became the biggest story of all these revelations, is that the family is racist.
Yes.
Now we're supposed to believe that's never what they intended. Harry says that, Trisha Goddard says it. There's now a kind of whole revisionist thing going on. But this had real consequences. I didn't believe it at the time, and I had to leave my job for disbelieving what was being said. You then had to leave your job.
Because I was supporting you.
Because you supported my right to free speech and didn't agree with me.
Yeah.
Right? You had to go, what do you feel about this?
It's all just craziness going around and around, and he's turned his life and the royal family's life into a soap opera. It's like a really bad, distasteful
it's always been a soap
opera.
I think what's different is it's always been speculative soap opera, right? You know, part of the thing of the papers, he goes on and on and on in all these interviews and the book. I had to go through all this. The press are just evil, the devil, he calls them, all this kind of stuff. And yet the press, without the press, there wouldn't be a royal family.
No.
Without the press doing predominant, I remember the coverage of his wedding. Couldn't have been more universally praiseworthy.
It was
right?
beautiful.
He could barely bring himself to even acknowledge that. Right? This guy is so blindly hateful of the media, and British press in particular, even though he gets exactly the same coverage in many parts of the world. But when you haven't read the whole thing, I know, but I have. I've never read anyone high profile talk about their family like this. All of them.
Oh, I
his
know.
dad,
I know.
his
All of them.
stepmom,
I know.
his brother, his sister-in-law, the Queen's dresser, cops it.
Yeah.
And there's a really bad bit in here, which I really disliked, which is very revealing about his character, where he trashes the matron at Lovegrove Prep School, who he names as Pat. He calls her greasy and ugly, didn't make the boys horny, right? And says that, just carries on disparaging her. She had a disability with her spine, which made her...
she had to walk
And he used to mock
backwards.
her, mock the way she couldn't walk properly. And he boasts about this. This is a guy who, on his website for Archewell, their foundation, describes as standing for compassion. Where's the compassion in any of this?
I think,
Katie?
well, listen, I'm just hearing you picking up that story. And, I was reporting on Harry when he was falling in and out of nightclubs, getting into brawls with paparazzi. I remember speaking to the mother of one girl who he was dating who said he really just was impolite, he was rude, he turned up drunk, with sick on him. They didn't want him around their girl, OK? And that was understandable. This is clearly a man who feels that he's gone through a metamorphosis, a massive reinvention, and has come out on the other side. But what was so interesting, I felt, about watching the interview with Tom Bradby, and I think Bradby did a very robust, very good job with him, was when...
He didn't mention the Taliban.
No, but he brought up the
that.
racist allegations, as he rightly did. But it was very clear that when Harry was almost steered off into a zone where he wasn't comfortable, where he couldn't channel his therapy speak and everything else, he looked very uncomfortable. And I want to make just one quick point on these racism allegations. I think this is very important. When this turned into the biggest race row that this country's been in as long as I can remember...
Well, the biggest the royals have ever been.
And the most troubling storm for the royal family, Harry and Meghan came out and made it clear in a subsequent statement that they were not talking about the Queen or Prince Philip because, of course, this witch hunt ensued. That would have been an ample opportunity to have said, and by the way, this wasn't an allegation or a charge of racism, it was one of unconscious bias. Done.
I think what's happened is he realised too late, because there's a report that he tried to get the book withdrawn, that actually this was all going too far. The fact that he hasn't mentioned that in here, the single most explosive revelation isn't in the book, nor is this supposed thing with the palace denying Meghan help for her suicidal thoughts.
Two very, very major omissions.
Well, they were the two biggest. They were the two biggest bombshells. Neither are in his book of his life. Let me bring in Ben. You fantastic service to your country as a Royal Marine, and you were severely wounded in the process. Thank you, first of all, for your amazing service.
No worries.
And it's great to see you. You know Harry. You fought alongside him in Afghanistan. What do you make of this? And in particular, the boasting about killing 25 Taliban.
Yeah, well, I wasn't with Harry in Afghanistan. I was in a whole different area.
But you were out there. You were out there.
Yeah. The 25 body count thing, it was obviously him in context telling the story, and he mentioned the number. But I think he could have told the story very easily without mentioning that number. I don't think it was boasting. But at the same time...
If you say it and give a number to it, aren't you just boasting?
No,
I mean, whichever way you try and describe it.
He's just literally saying what he's done, which was his job, and thank God, because that was why we were able to get out of there, kind of thing, because we called them in and they helped us out. But I don't think mentioning that number was wise.
Would you ever do that?
No, I mean, the difference is if I killed 10,000 men, no one cares, but if he killed one, everyone cares. So it's not wise for him to mention it. It's a bit like poking a bear as you walk past. Like, there's no point in... That's not going to do any favours. So I don't think he's boasting it, but I think he could have easily said what he said without mentioning that number, which was 10 years old.
And on the specific racism thing, was your understanding, just as a member of the public, when you watched... Did you watch the Oprah interview?
Not a lot of it.
But you saw the clips. And stuff.
Yeah.
Was your impression that they were saying that someone had been racist about the skin colour of their child?
I'll be honest, it did come across that way a bit. And then obviously when the media jumped in it, I did think, I wonder who was racist, like, because it did kind of come across that way. The thing is, just in my opinion, it's almost like, you go to like a comedy show and the comedian says a joke that you don't like, and you're offended by it. You can say that you're offended, but the comedian doesn't have to care. So you just kind of get mad, kind of thing. It seems like that's like with his family, like he's obviously not happy with certain things, and he might have said it to them, and they don't have to care, they don't have to respond or apologise because his feelings get hurt. So then he's kind of moved away, supposed to be happy in America, but he's not clearly.
He's not happy, is he?
No, so then he's kind of attacking his family by revealing everything, waiting for like an apology, but you're not going to get one.
I just think everyone defending him, I just think if it was their family, and someone was going on television because they had some kind of profile and was just doing this endlessly, trashing the family, all of them. I mean, it would, I think most people would cut that person off.
I still think Harry's great. I think a lot of troops do. You can't take away what he's done for this country more than most.
No, you can't.
But yes, he's fell out with his family, but we don't need to now see all of this because it's your family at the end of the day. I just think, even though I love Harry, he's a great guy, from what I know and what I've seen, I don't have to support every move that he makes, including this one.
This is Talk TV.
Let me start with the Queen. of royal books. The Queen actually of magazine editing as well. The Queen in many different spheres. Tina Brown, I've really wanted you on the show about this because it's been rumbling on now for, a long time. What is your summary of where we are with Harry?
Well, the interesting part is, there's an expression in therapy, which is the extinction burst, right? That when sometimes patients sort of act it all out, like throw it all out, and that's it. It's an extinction burst, and then they're calm. So the question is this the Harry's extinction burst? But the problem is with him is that he's so much in his own bubble that he's not thinking about or caring really about how these bullets land. I mean, he is right now like in his Apache helicopter, like firing these,
Right.
But here's the thing. He regarded the Taliban as he says, very unattractively as sort of just objects, things on a chessboard.
Chess pieces, yeah.
But the people he's hurling these bullets at this time, these are real people, right?
Yeah,
they
sure.
are his family. So how does he imagine that this extinction burst can now be followed with reconciliation? Because it's like they've been left like bleeding on, like reeling, and helicopters, sort of propellers going in their face. How can they be ready for it? He's basically said, "I'm going to just like annihilate you all. Now I'm ready to reconcile."
Yeah, to me, it's
very strange.
Well, to me, it's a complete joke. Let's bring in Roya. Roya, you're very plugged in with the royals and the palaces. What has been the reaction of the royal family? Just a little bit that I know is that they're utterly staggered by what they've been reading and hearing, deeply hurt, and incredibly angry. And in Prince William's case, very, very, very angry.
Piers, I would say all of the above. Pretty dismayed, I think, by the level of detail that Harry's chosen to go into. And I think, one of the sort of ongoing themes here, and I've really felt it as I've read the book, and these extraordinarily personal conversations with members of his family emerge, you sort of wonder how he might have reacted if the shoe had been on the other foot and members of his family had, put into a book those kind of conversations. The royal family are pretty cross, pretty angry, pretty devastated and upset. But I do really think that they will still continue to absorb all of this and keep on and carry on silently. I don't think we're going to get any kind of big on-the-record reaction. I think the hope with the royal family is this, when Harry's finally done his last interview, whenever that might be, this will burn out, and then possibly reconciliation may begin. But that's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think. I
can't imagine it happening at all. If this was my family, I'd never want to see that person again. Let's bring in Maureen across the pond in America. There's a kind of split view, really, about... I think younger Americans perhaps feel a bigger affinity with this kind of thing. They like the outpouring of emotion and all the rest of it. But most Americans I've spoken to over the age of about 30 share my own revulsion about this constant attack on the royal family by one of their own.
Yeah, Piers, it's interesting. I'm not seeing really a divide by age group. I think what we're seeing, especially in the aftermath of the Bradby interview, the 60 Minutes interview, the Strahan interview, and now he's on the cover of People here in the States, is an actual overwhelming backlash to the sheer number of lies he's been caught telling. To see him tell Tom Bradby, well, we never said the royal family was racist, with a straight face, and blame the British press, when we have all spent the past 2 years litigating and relitigating what is wrong in the House of Windsor, and to do this, to allow this lie, this odious lie to stand when your grandfather is on his deathbed, when your grandmother is in ailing health, when you're talking about legacy-destroying accusations, how no journalist could push back and say, Harry, why, during any moment during the past 2 years, did you not raise your hand and say, you know what, media, you got it wrong? For someone who loves to tell the media how much they got it wrong, this particular hypocrisy to me is beyond the pale.
I completely agree with you. Harry has told People magazine, it's a duty, a job, a service to our country. I've done all I could to be the best soldier I could. There's truly no right or wrong way to try and navigate these feelings, but I know from my own healing journey that silence has been the least effective remedy. Expressing and detailing my experience is how I chose to deal with it in the hopes it would help others. What's your reaction to that justification?
Well, I think he's actually, in the comments he's made, I don't personally have a huge problem with him spelling out the numbers he's killed. Everyone knows he was a crew member of an Apache attack helicopter whose job was to kill the enemy. I don't have an issue with that. The issue I have is with the way he's described British Army training to teach people like him that the Taliban and the enemy are less than human. They're just chess pieces to be swept off the board, which is dangerous because it's wrong. That's not the way the British Army is taught. And it also shows the army in a way that I think feeds straight into jihadist propaganda. They'll use that. They already have used it to show the lack of humanity of the British forces, the way the British forces did not treat fighters in Afghanistan as human beings. And it will lead, I think, to radicalisation and possibly to inciting Taliban and other jihadists to carry out attacks against British people here in this country and elsewhere in the world.
Well, Rob O'Neill, I mean, there's been a lot of backlash to this from the British armed forces, certainly. Almost everyone I've seen has shared the view of Colonel Kemp that he shouldn't have gone down this avenue. We know you as the man who heroically shot and killed the world's worst terrorist, Osama bin Laden, and thank you again for doing that. We know that because you wrote about it yourself in a book, a great book, and you talk about other kills as well in there. Do you intrinsically have any problem with what Harry has said here?
No, I don't have a problem with it at all, Piers. If he goes through the proper channels, which I hope he did, then there's nothing wrong with talking about what happens in war. And it's just, as far as the history of war goes and for future generations, as long as it's the truth, and if you're telling the truth, you don't need to remember anything else. Having said they're like chess pieces, I think that's giving him a compliment because it's not that complex. The man's flying an Apache helicopter, a kill helicopter, and he's giving him a little bit of credit. I mean, it's not like Islamists are going to like us any less or want to kill us more because of something Prince Harry said. And it's, the Haqqanis are saying it. The Haqqanis have been jihadis and criminals, traffickers and drug pushers since the Russians invaded. So it's not like they're great people either. Yeah, I mean, he said what he said, and I think he was nice about it. It was up to me, and they were actually terrorists. I wish he would have killed more.
I mean, somebody said that there's a big difference between a British soldier, or someone like you, for example, killing 100 Taliban and a member of the royal family killing one, that the amplification of the fact he's a member of the royal family doing this does put a bigger security risk target against the royal family, against him and his family now in California, and potentially against British troops because of who he is.
Well, like I was saying, I mean, there's been a target on them forever, and there will be. And, it's not like if he'd said nothing, they could put their heads in the sand and pretend they're not targets. They are targets. I hope their security is, on point. And I hope, hope they're fine. But the realization there are people that they're going to hate him and me and you just the same, as always. And they're going to prop this up. They're putting Afghanistan back on the map and Helmand Province, which is dangerous on the map. But, he said what he said, and I'm glad he said it. And we can learn from what people did there.
If you had had have you got any brothers? I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I've got an older brother, and as far as getting beat up,
well, I was going to ask you, if your older brother,
I would have talked about him beating me up too.
If your older brother had knocked you into a dog bowl and broken your necklace, would you have ever put that into the public domain, or would you have felt that would be probably the most shameful admission you could ever make?
Well, being a younger brother, like I said, I tell my brother he was the reason I joined the Navy, just so I could come back and kick his butt. And it all depends on the size of the contract. If I need to rub some dirt on my brother to get some cash, who knows?
What do you make it, Rob, of this? I mean, you're one of the most famous guys in America. What do you make of this Harry and Meghan ongoing saga? Do you care?
Well, I am married, and Jessica loves it, so I hear about it. I had to tell her the other day, look, Jessica, as much as I love to talk to you about this, I'm out of talking points. I don't care enough to do it. I mean, I've never met either one of them, and I wish them the best. It is entertaining once in a while, but I can't get into it that much when there's other things in life that are more important to me.
Do you ever think that maybe if King George III had not been so useless, we could have still had a royal family in America, possibly even King Piers by now?
Yeah, King Piers. I tell you what, if we want to make campaign posters for 2024, put me on there with you, buddy.
I think I could have done a good job on the throne of America. Robin Hill, great to talk to you.
Whoa, guys, where do you think you're going?
Look, we're cool with John. We swear.
We've got a strict admission policy in here.
And you're not getting in with those trainers on.
Feel the Shield, a fusion allergy nasal spray.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Safe to use for all noses.
I'm joined by the Black Lives Matter activist, Iman Aden, and the author and friend of Prince Harry, and former rugby international, James Haskell. Well, welcome to both of you. James, you've been sitting very patiently there, listening to me tear into your mate. Am I wrong?
I've never seen you in full flow, actually. It's quite terrifying. I was wondering what was going to happen if you got a bit shouty, and I was trying to think, am I articulate enough, am I intelligent enough to take Piers Morgan on?
Well, I have seen you in full flow on a rugby field, and you have another way of dealing with
That's
people
what I
you don't
thought.
like. So I think on this balance, I'll keep you just...
I thought violence could be the answer. Quick way to go to the roof. Look, I think it's interesting because obviously you're very invested in the story. I think there's a lot of people...
Well, I'll tell you, before you go any further, I just want to say the reason I'm so personally invested, I think people know why, is because I queried a lot of these things at the time. And I, for example, when the Oprah exchange with Meghan Markle about racism was played, we'll play it now so you can remind yourselves, and I'll tell you what then happened. Let's watch this.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a
about it.
conversation with you,
with Harry,
about how dark your baby is going to be.
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Okay.
Compartmentalized
Because they were
conversations.
concerned that if he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but that if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
Here's the thing, James. The morning after that aired, on Good Morning Britain, I came out fighting. And I said, look, I just don't believe that. I don't believe a senior member of the royal family would have expressed concern that if the baby's skin colour was too dark, that would be a problem. And I wanted to see the evidence. I also said that when she talked about having suicidal thoughts and then said she went to the palace, spoke to officials, and they said she couldn't get help for it, I said, I just can't believe that conversation has happened. I want to see the evidence. For 2 years, no evidence emerged. It's not in his book, either of those things. They don't appear in the book of his life. And now he just casually says, well, we never meant it to be racism. That was the evil British press. Now, look, I get why he hates the press. I get it. He thinks the press killed his mother. I think a drunk driver killed his mother. And I think that she was obsessively followed by the paparazzi, and too much so. And I've always said that. But ultimately, the inquest determined it was a drunk driver was the predominant cause of her death. But he hates the press because he believes that the press conspired to kill his mother. So I get why he feels the way he does. But that doesn't give him license to brand his family a bunch of racists. Allow 2 years of this kind of onslaught headline, so damaging to the royals' reputation. And you know, like you do a podcast with Mike Tindall, you know how they all feel about this. And then to casually say, we didn't mean that.
Yeah, look, I think...
When I put it like that, does part of you think, even though you're a mate...
No, look, I think I'm always very objective about everything. Just as the people I would expect my friends to be objective about me. I don't really get things right all the time. I saw the documentary and I've read only a little bit of the book because I only got it the other day. I'm a slow reader, as you imagine, being a rugby player. And one of the things I've felt as a Z-list celebrity, right, is incomparable to someone like Harry. I understand how the media... aren't always held accountable. They can take things and put their interpretation on it. Yeah. Part of the stuff that he talked about in his book, because the manuscript was stolen, right, and a lot of this sensationalist stuff, because it was so out there, was taken out of context.
Yeah, but hang on, I've read it all.
Yes.
I literally spent 6 hours on Tuesday reading the whole thing, precisely so I can see things in context. The point about the Taliban revelation, for example, was twofold. One, the British Army guy, they just don't put a number on it in public. They might to each other.
No, I agree with that.
They don't do it in public.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah,
You've spoken to enough of them. Secondly, dehumanising the enemy to a bunch of chess pieces. That, again, is not something they do in public. They might in the bar, but they know that there is a certain code that comes with being a British Army either officer or one of the troops. And you don't cross that line.
I mean, I think. Look, you're looking at kind of with the intention with the particular details. When I'm talking more as an overarching view of saying when someone is in his position, more often than not, the belief from being part of the royal family was never complain, never explain, never comment about anything. Right. Firstly, we've got to break this idea that they're not just a normal family, because they absolutely are. Dysfunctional, normal family that everybody has.
Well, they're not a normal family.
Well. But no,
because they live in palaces, they have loads of servants.
They do, but...
And the British taxpayer pays for them. They don't pay for you and me.
No, but when they scrape that away, because they are simply still humans. I know people think...
I know lots of them,
I'm not religious, so I don't believe that people are ordained by God.
I agree they're human beings,
right?
yes.
So if you take that to a point, and in his position, you very rarely get to tell your story without a journalist interviewing you. So you and I are on TV today, right? This could be edited up, and bits of it could be altered. Or if you were doing a written interview, your interpretation is written out, not what I actually said. So I feel that he has written this book as a way of going, look, regardless of what happened, this is what I feel. And I'm not saying whether it's true or not. I've got no comment. I don't really care, to be honest with you. But I'm saying he's put this out there to go, this is my version. I finally got an opportunity to speak. Now, whether he should have spoken, what he said was right or wrong, that's another story. I just feel that people in that position don't often get to tell their story, and I think he's done it in a way that most of his peers and most of his family have never had the opportunity to do. And that's, I think, for me, that's important, because it cannot be misinterpreted or shouldn't be misinterpreted.
Let me tell you what would happen. If they all did what he's done, the monarchy would die.
I agree, and that's
the
not right,
mystique would go.
Agreed.
They would become a real-life soap opera. Right, it would be utterly catastrophic for the reputation of the royal family and the monarchy if all they did was throw mud at each other in public, and the monarchy would die. One of the last surviving monarchies as it is.
But I think, interestingly, in his particular situation with what happened to his mother, for example, right? And again, in your own words, you said, look, was she hounded to the nth degree? Yes.
Yeah.
And do you see what happens with the royal family, for example, that the zeitgeist of how popularity goes? 1 minute, one of them is the best thing since sliced bread. The next minute,
but that's why they have to play the long game. I mean, the Queen Mother was a great example. She never gave an interview, nor did her daughter, the Queen. She was absolutely of the mantra, never complain, never explain, because she just thought over time it all balances out. You get the great stuff. We've had the Jubilee celebrations.
I think in the modern...
and you get the negative stuff.
But I think, sorry to interrupt you, but in the modern world, right, when she was reigning and when the Queen Mother was alive, you didn't have social media, you didn't have instant comments, you didn't have 24-hour news. That is a new feature, and the problem is...
I don't think it matters.
Well, I think it does, because the way it spreads and the nature of things like trolling, you cannot get the truth out there. So, for example, I follow you on Twitter. I'm a big fan of what you do in lots of parts, but you're very defensive of yourself. So when someone questions you,
of course,
you will come out and tell the truth.
Yeah, but I'm a journalist. I'm not a member of the royal family.
No, but he is also a human that I think feels that he's put up with a lot of rubbish. So just as you would defend yourself, I would defend myself. The difference is what he does now actually has some weight. Because when, for example, if you wrote an article about me in the paper and it was wrong and I got an apology, it's page 37. If I did a video on social media after that you made me front page article, maybe 20 people see it.
Yeah.
He has now put a flagpole or a mark in the ground to say, this is my truth, this is my story. Now, you can debate it to the nth degree whether that's factually correct, but I think that's just important for him.
Well, Prince Harry says he's a feminist, so in his own words, here's how he talks about women, from his mother-in-law to the disabled matron at his school.
You wrote, I even wanted Camilla to be happy. Maybe she'd be less dangerous if she was happy.
Mm-hmm.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
That made her dangerous.
That made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press.
I want to sort of just briefly talk about your stepmother in the press, because you are pretty consistently scathing and suggest that you are...
Scathing?
Well...
What's scathing towards...
Well, as in you say that your interests were sacrificed on her PR altar.
I think in the book it's very clear what happened. There's no part of any of the things that I've said are scathing towards any member of my family, especially not my stepmother.
Unlike the other matrons, Pat wasn't hot. Pat was cold. Pat was small. Walking was hard, stairs were torture. She'd descend backwards, glacially. Often we'd stand on the landing below her doing antic dances, making faces. Do I need to say which boy did this with the most enthusiasm? We went on mocking her as she came down the stairs. The reward was worth the risk. For me, the reward wasn't tormenting poor Pat, but making my mates laugh. Who the hell is this editor? Loathsome toad, I gathered. Everyone who knew her was in full agreement that she was an infected pustule on the arse of humanity, plus an excuse for a journalist.
Now, that editor happens to be a good friend of mine. And, yeah, not a nice way to speak about a woman, right? Especially someone who gets so uptight when people use that kind of language about his wife. Well, joining me now is journalist and friend of Camilla, Petronella Wyatt, the Sun's royal photographer, friend of everybody, Arthur Edwards, and the journalist and historian, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Arthur, let me start with you, because you've covered the royals for longer than I've been alive.
Well, not quite.
Sorry to jump that one on you.
Only 40 years,
but nearly.
Only 40 years.
But you know them. You've known them all very, very well. What do you make of this book and the interviews around it?
Well, I'm pretty disgusted the way you said about Camilla, because she is just the nicest person. And, when she married the prince, he risked everything for that. There was a lot of hostility towards him over that. But you know what? She just got her head down, worked and worked and worked. And I remember those early jobs with her. She was so nervous, but she kept trying. And in the end, people got to love her because they found what a really nice person she is. And Harry just trashing her like that, I really wanted to smack him one. I thought it was an awful thing to do. She's been nothing but nice to him. I remember once when I think it was 2017, and he made some stupid mistake, a statement about he didn't want to be a member of the royal family anymore. And I remember talking to her about it the next day. She said, he's such a lovely boy. Camilla, all she said was how nice he was, speaking...
Listen, I've known Camilla a long time. She comes from the next door village to me. I've known her a long time in her family. They're incredibly nice people, very down to earth, very normal. I had lunch with her, this now infamous lunch with Jeremy Clarkson was out just before Christmas. She was utterly delightful to everyone. And I don't think she deserves this.
No, do I.
To be called a dangerous villain by Prince Harry as we head towards a coronation where her and Charles are going to, be crowned, our king and queen of this country. I just felt was so damaging and unnecessary. Tessa, defend it.
I just would like, as it's all about truth and accuracy, I'm not sure he called her a dangerous villain.
Well, he did. He called her a villain and dangerous.
No, he explained that she was the villain of the piece because she was the other woman. Slightly taken out of context, in fact, that line.
Yeah, but he knows what he's right. He knows when he writes those things, that'll be the headline. He's been around.
You're crediting him with high intelligence, and I think Harry has many things. No, I don't think he's stupid, actually.
I don't think anyone would accuse him of high intelligence.
I think he has high EQ.
I think he's got high ego. And we're seeing the full blast of it right now. What about the way he generally talks about women?
Can we just pick up on the Camilla thing and what you two have both said, that she's charming, that, she's the woman next door, literally, for you, the village next door, that she does have this very natural way. She's comfortable in her skin. She fits in. She gets on with it. She loves a gin. She loves a fag. We all love Camilla. Do you know, when that replaces your dead mother and when you feel like an outsider... There's umbrage there.
Yeah, but sure.
There's a feeling...
But hang on. His mother died in 1997. Yeah. We're now 2022. He's nearly 40 years old. All right? There comes a time... It's 2023. There comes a time when you just have to not move on and forget your mother, but actually accept your father's very happy with a woman, been married to you for 17 years. Why would you try and ruin her reputation in the run-up to the coronation?
I think there's probably aspects of jealousy where she has managed to rehabilitate her image. And interestingly, she's done that in Britain. She hasn't successfully done that in other realms, or indeed within the Commonwealth, where things are on much thinner ice. And
she hasn't been given a chance
No,
yet.
it is, therefore, his point stands, really, that it is about her ability to work alongside the press, of which both of you two are significant players.
Sure.
So that point stands. Now, as for his relationship with his stepmother, only they know the real truth, don't they? And we're only hearing one side.
We're never going to hear Camilla's side.
Camilla has other things to protect her.
No, Camilla will never. She will never respond to any of this. And that's why I feel sorry for all the royals, because they're trapped now with this hand grenade going off.
The thing is that Camilla had to endure such vicious attacks from the press and a level of violence from the public that Meghan never did.
It was never even close.
I remember when Camilla had bread rolls thrown at her.
That story was not true.
Well,
she says it's not true.
Maybe it wasn't, but she really was at one point the most hated woman in Britain.
And the stuff about this poor matron, Pat Jones, she has a name, Pat Jones. She was the matron at Lovegrove School. He calls her greasy. He calls her ugly. None of the boys got horny when they saw her. She had a spinal deficiency, which he mocked and did it in person. He mocked the way she walked.
And why does he have
How can you defend any of that?
And why does he have to talk about Todgers, for example?
No, but more importantly, how can he take down his matron like that?
I want to make 2 points. One, to answer your specific question on the matron. That is preparatory school mentality.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be confined to the dustbin.
Why would you put it in a book?
Yes, but it's been written.
Why, when you're supposedly a great feminist, why would you annihilate this poor innocent woman? We don't even know if she's alive or not, or whether her family have read this. But this was probably something she talked about. I was a matron to Prince Harry.
Just hang on. It was written now.
Actually, it was quite poetic, that piece.
It wasn't poetic. It was nasty.
And by the way, let me finish my piece. It ends up, the payoff is, actually, the great joy for this boy who's just lost his mother is to make all the kids laugh. And then, and I'm going to...
whoopee-doo for him, but there's no payoff for the matron that he abused.
Wait, let me read the line. I loved cracking my mates up, but nothing quite did it for me, like making the otherwise miserable Pat bust a gut.
Right. How does that make Pat feel?
She laughed too.
Right.
She laughed because she had to laugh.
I bet she wouldn't be laughing. She wouldn't be laughing at a description of herself in the fastest-selling book in history of being greasy, ugly, and not making the balls horny.
Because she was an employee.
I think it was totally. I'm sorry. I think it's totally disgusting.
It's like making fun of a servant. She had to laugh. She had no choice.
Jump in as the rose between two thorns.
The thorn between two roses.
Feeling very
I think. look, going back to Harry, I mean, he was saying about Camilla using the media. No one used it more than Harry.
Right.
I mean, we went everywhere in the world with him, and he was fantastic. And I remember at the end of the day, we'd all go to the pub and we'd have a drink with him, and he would get it all off his chest. But, you know, he used to say to us, I do my best to give you great pictures every day. I want to get in the paper, you know, get it in the paper, promote these causes that I'm patron of. He was brilliant. So, you know, having to go about Camilla doing exactly the same thing.
No, it's just the brass neck of it. I'm sorry. I just read that book. I put it down, but I finished. I went, this guy is just a spoiled, entitled, victimhood-laden
But
brat.
he is also, I think he's deeply unhappy because a happy person
so unhappy.
does not write that kind of book. He knows it's going to hurt, and a self-proclaimed protector of women's reputations and someone who objected to anyone who suggested that Meghan Google the royal family or somehow schemed to marry into it, says that Camilla schemed to marry Charles and become Queen Consort.
But I think we're all losing sight of the bigger picture.
No, we're not.
I hear Piers in tone on your love, understandable love for the monarchy. Here we have Andrew Edwards, MBE, Arthur Edwards, for his services to the crown.
Legend Andrew Edwards. The legendary Andrew Edwards.
Can you remember
who writes favourably about the royals in The Spectator regularly. You're passionate royalists, more so than me. I'm also a royalist, by the way. But if we want this institution to survive, it's no good getting in behind our bunker and going, go away, everyone else. Our royal family.
No.
We're not.
What we're saying, all right, imagine for a moment. Imagine now that William does his version in a book.
He's not going to.
Exactly. Kate does hers. Camilla does hers. The royal family would collapse. There would be no royal family. There'd be no monarchy. They would be sent off to some part of Europe, and that'd be the last we'd ever see of them, like every other monarchy virtually in Europe, right? So we have one of the last great monarchies. And that's why I care. I care when this little renegade duo in California are making hundreds of millions of dollars spray gunning this family and the institution whilst trading off the royal titles they've been given. I think it's totally disgusting.